Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayodhira nishtaparayashu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata seva bhagavati uttamashuki bhaktir bhavati naistiki nigamaka paradityam param shukamakaram itadravisamitam pibata bhagavatam rashamariyam mahora horisikabuvi bhagaham Krishna Sadhama Bhagate Dhammaginihi Karonashta Dushamasha Padana Kodunodidaham Tamapiyadabhishuta Vishuddham Vibhusam Apyadena Vidambidotsaram Prakyahituhum Aradaram Sanklesanavadam Musantin Nanyataham Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Bhaskata Desarani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to Motivational Monday. Good morning, Rakesh, Bhavna from right here in Salt Lake City, Radhe Sham, Pavana, who live out in Tuwele, Western City. Jimmy and Taruni, thank you so much for your generous PayPal donation. We certainly appreciate it in these lean times. Sanjay, my old friend. Sharma, good morning. Jean, Jiva Goswami Das, good morning. Lakshmi Nishinga Prabhu, all the way from Puerto Rico. They were picking coconuts on the beach yesterday. I had to exert willpower not to turn green with envy. But it's been a very mild winter here in Utah. You can go out in very light jacket. It's 30 to 35, which may sound cold if you live in Puerto Rico, but get used to it really quickly. It's just a walk in the park, 35 degrees. We've had hardly no snow this year so far. Good morning, Guru Tran. Raquel and Sean from Stockton, California. Good morning. Rupa Manjari. Prashant, okay. We'll roll out some of these verses. Thanks you. I have to tell you, unfortunately, I won't be here tomorrow. Scheduled to get the vaccine at 9 o'clock in Salt Lake City, so that won't leave enough time to squeeze in the class before we have to leave, myself and Bobby. But we'll be back on Wisdom Wednesday. We'll be missing you all tomorrow on Transcendental Tuesday. But it's in the interest of getting through this rough patch here. They say if you get the vaccine, even if you should get the COVID, it makes the symptoms less severe. So that's what I want for Bobby for sure. So we're both going to go and get the vaccine tomorrow. And I'll have to skip our session tomorrow. But today's will be so relishable, so enjoyable, so palatable that hopefully it'll get you through this hiatus, which is opening up tomorrow. What we're going to do is talk about the cow today. Skipping forward a little bit to the 8th verse in the 4th chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you have it in front of you. Good morning, Ajay. Good morning, Goradas. We're honored that you've jumped aboard here. Thank you so much. Sa go dahana matram hi. So right away, you recognize the word go and matram. That means go means cow and matram means mother. So this verse has to do with our mother, who is the cow. Our natural mother gives us birth. She feeds us her breast milk for 1 or 2 years. Honestly, I'm not sure how long because I don't remember. But we drink the milk of our other mother, the cow, throughout our whole life. So therefore, she's a kind of mother and should be respected. And to kill one's mother is not considered to be civilized behavior. Matricide is one of the most heinous of all crimes. And so even if you're a meat eater in India, you're severely, strictly warned not to eat beef, not to eat the meat of a cow. Better not to eat any flesh of any animal, not to be the cause of suffering, because according to the law of karma, that's going to come back on you. So if you want the highest level of peace and tranquility for you and your family members, it's best not to shed any blood, but if you have to, take some lower animal, eat that, but do not eat your mother, the cow. That's going to be the message today. I'll give you a heads up. Good morning, Raleigh. Good morning, Ram Kishore. Thank you so much. You just sent me a friend request, and we're officially Facebook friends. So, go dahana matram hi griha shugriya medinam. It refers to the householders. Avekshate Mahabhagas. Mahabhagas is Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedas. Tirti Kurvams Yad Ashramam. Tirti Kurvams. Tirti is a word for a place of pilgrimage. There's Hardwar, Rishikesh, Gangotri, there's Tirupati, Dwarka. There are many places of pilgrimage throughout India. However, the saints like Sukadeva Goswami are the moving places of pilgrimage. They carry the Lord within their heart and they move from place to place. So wherever they are, that is a tirtha. Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Tirthu Korvanti Tir Tirthandi Shantavavitaham. Says the tirthas are actually not a place, not a river, but they are the pure devotees of the Lord who travel from here and there in order to give blessings to householders and mankind in general. In fact, when you go to the place tirtha, like Vrindavan or other places, what purifies the place are not only the fact that the Lord or his saints performed pastimes there in the past, but more importantly, the place is purified by the residential sadhus, the residential holy men who live in that place. And you shouldn't go to a tirtha, place of pilgrimage, just to take a bath or just to get darshan. You should go to here and to associate with the holy men there. And that's how you'll get the maximum benefit from visiting tirthas or places of pilgrimage. So the translation of this verse is, he, Sukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he did this just to sanctify the residents. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Sukadeva Goswami met Maharaj Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow. So he would arrive at the time the cow was being milked, and he would take one little cup of milk, which would sustain him throughout the whole day. And his arriving at the door of the householder was not for his benefit. There are roots and herbs that he could have had in the forest to sustain himself, but his appearing at the threshold of the householders was to sanctify their existence. And should they have any questions they would want to ask him, then so much the better. Now, he didn't spend any more time than was minimally necessary in the place of the householders. His job was as a renunciate to avoid any sort of attachments to hearth and home. Good morning, Anjali. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, Bhai Bobby. Krishna has a very special relationship, and Krishna's devotees have a very special relationship with the cows. As stated in the Vishnu Purana, Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmani Taya Cha Jagati Taya Krishnaya, Govindaya Namo Namaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, Matasavam Iti Matva Bhajanti Mam Buddha Bhava Samamita. Everything comes from him. He's the origin of both the material and spiritual worlds. And as the creator and proprietor of all worlds, he can appear at will in any of his creations. Just like a landlord, he may rent out hundreds and hundreds of income properties to renters and lessers. But he has the right, it's written right there in the lease, that he can inspect any property at any time. He has a master key. So the lesser has to agree, has to acknowledge that the lesser is just leasing the property. He doesn't own it. The owner actually has proprietorship, and the owner has the right of free and unlimited, unrestricted visitation to check on how the renter is taking care of his property. So people say God can't come here. Actually, no one has more right to come here than God. He created everything. He's the owner. He's the landlord, you might say. So it's us who are the interlopers, who are the intruders. We're just passing through from lifetime to lifetime. We can't claim any ownership. We can't claim any creator abilities. We can't claim any control. All that is inherent in the Lord himself. So of course he can come here. Now, he doesn't come here for recreational purposes. He doesn't come here for a vacation. He comes here to set an example. He comes here to give us a glimpse of his beauty and the glories of the spiritual world so that we can turn our lives around, do a 180, and move instead of deeper and deeper into darkness, repeated birth and death amongst the lowest species of life because of our unnatural attachment to material appetites, goals, and ambitions. His appearance gives us the opportunity to know factually who is the transcendental autocrat in the spiritual world, how beautiful he is, how superior the spiritual world, and most importantly, how he longs for us, how keenly he wants to gather us back into his loving embrace and pave our path back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, he appears from time to time, and he engages during the periods of his manifest pastime in the most exemplary ideal vocations. As Krishna, appearing as the foster child of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda in Vrindavan, he occupied most of his childhood time with the cows. Vrindavan was a rural village. Its economy was based on protection of the cows and production of dairy products. As you know, the mother cow produces more milk than the calf can drink. If the calf is allowed unrestricted access to the milk bag of the mother, it will get sick. It will drink too much milk. So it's common practice in dairies all over the world to let the calf drink a little bit in the morning, then separate the calves and cows until evening when they can come back and get a little drink. And in the meantime, we take that excess milk for human consumption. And that milk is unique. You can talk about goat's milk or water buffalo milk, but there is no milk which is quite equal to the milk of the cow in terms of giving a nutrition to the finer tissues of the brain. No other type of milk from any other type of quadruped will feed the finer tissues of the brain to the point that one can comprehend and grasp sublime spiritual truths. And so Sukadeva Goswami, of all the different foodstuffs that are available to him, his main sustenance was milk. He would appear in the doorway of the householders in the early morning hours when the cows were being milked in order to get just a cup of milk. And that was all he needed to sustain his brain. Remember, when he spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, he spoke continuously day and night for 7 days from memory. What he had heard from his great father Vyasadeva, Sukadeva Goswami repeated the message of Bhagavatam, 20,000 verses from memory. Anjali writes in the comment section, got milk, got a mustache. Of course, milk in those days had great potency. It was unpasteurized, unhomogenized. It was all boiled. People in India, they like to take their milk hot. They don't drink cold milk at all. Your lacto intolerances and your inability to digest milk in the Western countries comes from drinking it cold. Milk should not be drunk cold. It's hard to digest cold. But when it's boiled and heated and drunk, it assimilates directly into the bloodstream and goes to the brain for higher intelligence and higher development. Krishna, until he was about 11 or 12 years old, when he went to Mathura to kill Kamsa, pretty much exclusively spent his time with the cows, the cowherd boys, and the cowherd maidens of Vrindavan, personifying the happiest, most joyful, carefree, blissful life. And I think you'll agree that with all of our technology, all of our insulation, of all of our condos and apartment buildings and gated communities, we haven't achieved the level of happiness that a simple farmer with 1 or 2 kids and an acre of land and a cow experiences in India. Going out there and weeding and tilling as a family occupation, working side by side. Often the neighbors will come by to help. The weeding and tilling and planting is just like a party of get-togetherness, of community, cohesiveness. When your neighbor is tilling and planting, you go over and help him. I remember one time Bobby and I were headed down to St. George, and we stopped in at a little place near, I forget where it was, but there was a sort of a very primitive pioneer museum there, which contained a diary of one of the early settlers in central Utah. As I read through this diary, it occurred to me that the person who wrote the diary, a homesteader who subsisted on agricultural products, spent only about one day a week working on his own property. The other 6 days a week, he would go out and help his neighbors. If a neighbor had just arrived and needed a house, the whole community would come, and in 1 or 2 days, they'd build the house for the person. No mortgage, no escrow, no real estate agent fees, no living in a tent while your house is being built. Your house would be built in 1 or 2 days by the whole community. The interesting thing is that one day that he would spend taking care of his affairs, his neighbors would all be there helping him out. What a blissful, joyful, simple, ecstatic way of life. There's no happiness which technology can deliver, which in any way compares to the simple happiness of living on your own land, connected with your family members, eating together, working together, playing together. How many times is it the case that the mother calls everyone for the evening meal, and the boy doesn't want to come down because he's locked in his room listening to heavy metal? Other boy is playing video games to which he's addicted, and the girl is talking to her friends on her cell phone, and it's a big endeavor to get them to come down and sit with the family over dinner. And when you ask them, how was your day, honey? The kid's going to tell you about all the people he murdered in his video game, or all the lyrics he heard from AC/DC or Death Metallica. It's a struggle to get people to congregate to eat a simple meal together, and then they have nothing to talk about because of technology. They are all over the map. Vyavashatmaka buddhi eka kurunandana bahushaka yanajasta buddhi ovyavashayana. Says if you want happiness, learn to have single-pointed attention on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there is no food which is more conducive to peace, equanimity, plain living, and higher thinking than milk. And there are no pastimes of Krishna. Krishna is the all-attractive. Krishna means the all-attractive. Aishwarya Shamagasha Viryasha Yasja Gyanam Saranga Sanam Bhagami Singanam. He's the reservoir of all beauty, all fame, all wealth, all knowledge, all strength, and all humility. So there is no more personality, more attractive personality within all of creation than Krishna. And yet, of Krishna's pastimes that he performed while he was on the planet for 125 years, his most enchanting, attractive pastimes are those he spent in the first 12 years of his life as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. There are no pastimes of the Lord which are celebrated to the same degree as Krishna's childhood pastimes in Vrindavan are celebrated. I remember about 10 years ago, Bobby and I went to Kerala. And we landed, we ended up in Cochin, the capital city of Kerala in southwest India, just at the time in January when they have a week-long cultural festival. It's a huge extravaganza. For the whole morning hours from 8 until 12, and then from 2 until 8 at night, on about 10 different stages throughout the city, They would have Sanskrit recitation. They would have Kathakali. They would have Veena concerts, music, a complete extravaganza of the arts. So for 7 days, on 10 simultaneous stages for 8 hours a day, different presentations of the culture, the dance, the drama, the literature, the puppetry of India. Just stunning. Now, the main stage was on the beach there. It was a big tent, which could hold, my guess is 4,000 or 5,000 people. And the main day, which was a Saturday, was Kuchipudi. Kuchipudi is also a dance style, as well as Kathakali, which is indigenous to the area. And there were, the morning was dedicated to the boys up until about 1. And then the girls started after lunch at 2 o'clock. And it went till 1 o'clock in the morning. There were so many girls, and each one had a little number, a bib. And sitting on a panel right in front of the stage were celebrities, famous dancers, famous Bollywood stars, all of whom were qualified to judge the kids. And so that all the kids would be judged, and then the winners would be declared. Now the winners would possibly go on to have a career in Darshan or Bollywood. And those who didn't win, that was probably the last time that they would dance in front of an audience. They would go on to pursue careers and so on and so forth. So this is just like your equivalent of like the high school football championships or something, only it's non-contact, it's high, it's elevated, it's not brutal and uncivilized. It's very, very elevating. And these kids were, as you probably figured out, mostly high school age. The interesting thing was there were certain required elements. Each kid danced for about 12 minutes. And there were certain required elements. Hallmarks of Kuchipudi are that you dance for a certain period with a pot on your head. You also dance on a plate. You actually do some of the dance. You're required to stand on a sort of a shifting plate, and sometimes part of it has to do with sticks. But one required part was some pastime of Krishna or Vishnu, either in the Bhagavad Gita as a king at Dwarka or kidnapping Rukmini. There were all kinds of options. As I said, Krishna was on the planet for 125 years. He's the supreme person. We're persons. And one symptom of being a person is that we're active. We have energy. We have desires, appetites, and ambitions, which we glean from our Creator. So there's no one more active. There's no one more energetic than Krishna. So you can count on it that during the 125 years he was on the planet, he had an agenda, and in order to fulfill that agenda, he was active 22 hours a day. Yadyat adachich testash taderevachara sayat pranam kurute lokas tadanavartate. He came to attract us to the spiritual world. He didn't come here to sleep or hang out or watch DVDs or Metallica on the headphones. He came for our benefit, and he worked unselfishly for our benefit for the entirety of the 123 years to give us a glimpse of the spiritual world and try to convince us to turn our lives around and go back home, back to Godhead. So in that regard, he set an example of spiritual endeavor, spiritual activity. Yajat acharasisesas, whatever a great man does, common men will follow in his footsteps. Now God creates everything, including Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and they themselves, with all the other demigods, are empowered to perfectly run this material creation. It does not require God's participation. His creation is so perfect and complete that it runs by itself. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachere Purnasya Purnamidya Purnamiva Vashishate. God is full and complete, and everything that he creates, such as these planetary systems, are also full and complete. So he does not have to do anything, and yet he acts. Why? He says, Utsiriyorimeiroke na kuryam kamache sankarashe kartasham upahanyam imamprate. If I, the Supreme Being, kicked back, was lazy, self-pitying, morose, what kind of a message would that send to all living beings? He said, if I should fail to act, all the worlds will be put to ruination. Therefore, though he need not act, he always acts. And he acts exclusively for our benefit. He stands there holding his flute. He's not obliged to participate in the creation, the maintenance, or the dissolution of this material world. Him standing in the flute sends a very clear, unequivocal message to us that he is waiting for us. He's not allowing himself to get diverted or distracted with management issues. He's taken care of that. That's all covered. He's waiting for you with his flutes to his lips. What's taking you so long? And yet he acts. Because if he didn't act, if he didn't set the example, sadhu samtesiteshya prakatam gana prakatim yanti bhutane nigraham kim karishati. He says, as he acts, we also need to act. What good does repression accomplish? When Arjuna considers leaving the battlefield, abdicating his duties, and going to a forest ashram to perform yoga, Krishna says, it's better that you're a warrior, you love war, you're trained in war, act according to your nature. If you go to an ashram, you'll simply be upset. You'll be disturbed. It says you have to act according to your nature. The nature of Arjuna is he's happier in a battlefield situation than he is sitting somewhere with hummingbirds and waterfalls and fruits and flowers. Good morning, Schumann. Prashant is keeping right up with us. He's got the last 3 verses. Good morning, Govinda Day. So anyway, getting to the point here is that as I sat there, and this is an interesting little side story too. Originally, I was way in the back of the crowd. I was dressed in a kurta and a dhoti with tilak, and I was probably the only white-faced person in this entire crowd of 5,000 people. And I was in the back of the crowd looking over people's shoulders to see the performers, at least a football field away. They were up on an elevated stage. So I noticed that some of the judges were motioning towards the back, and they called a policeman over. So I saw this policeman start to make his way through the crowd, coming through the crowd from front to back, coming, it seemed like he was making a beeline for me. And his eyes seemed to be fixed on me. And this became even more apparent the closer he got as the crowd parted and he used his uniform and his position to part the Red Sea, you might see. It became more and more obvious that he was coming right to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, are Westerners allowed here? Am I someplace I shouldn't be? Am I going to get arrested and hauled away? So it was a pleasant surprise for me when the policeman arrived. And in English, he told me that we noticed you as a Hare Krishna. We have the greatest respect for Bhaktivedanta Swami and the Krishna devotees. And we're so glad that you're here from the West. So the judges wanted to invite you to come and sit in the press section up in the very front, like 10 feet from the stage, and enjoy there. So I went, by Krishna's grace, we're always saying Krishna will take you from the back to the front. So that's what Krishna did exactly. He took me from the back to the front. So I'm sitting there in the press section, and there's a reporter next to me. Hi, how are you? Where are you from? Utah. Oh yeah, you're iskcon. Yes, I'm iskcon. Is there a temple? Where are you? What state are you from? Utah. He says, Utah? He said, that's all Mormons, isn't it? I said, yeah, it's all Mormons, yeah. So what do you do in Utah? I said, well, we have a temple. We have a temple. And I showed him a little picture on my phone. He said, you have this temple in Utah? I said, yeah. He said, this is a story. This is a Sunday featured story in the biggest daily newspaper in the province, in the state. So he proceeded to interview me, write down all the answers. He called a photographer over, and he took pictures of me and Bhai Bobby. And sure enough, that was Saturday. Sunday, it was a feature, second-page story with pictures of the Kushum Sarovar Temple, Spanish for Utah. Of course, the script was Malayalam, so I couldn't read a word of it. But anyway, I could tell it was about us and the Krishna temple. Anyway, be that as it may, getting back to our mainstream here, It was required in the 12-minute program of all the dancers, something about Krishna or Vishnu. They all chose the childhood pastimes of Krishna. Stealing butter, feeding the monkeys, being dragged around, holding the tail of the bull, breaking twin Yamalarjuna trees, getting tied up from his abdomen by a rope to the grinding mortar. These were the pastimes of choice from these dancers. Why? Because Krishna is all attractive, but the most attractive period of Krishna's manifested pastimes was as a child in Vrindavan, as a cowherd boy, exhibiting the ideal, most happy, peaceful, joyful lifestyle, which we would all do well to follow. In the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 28th verse, Prashant, it says, Ayudanam aham vrajam, Denum ashmi kamada, prajanas chasmi kandarpa, sarparam ashmi mashuki. Of weapons I am the thunderbolt, of cows I am Sarabi, of causes for procreation I am Kandarpa, god of love. Just going to take the opportunity here to give you a few rap versions. This is from the 10th chapter, the opulences of the absolute from the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to chant you a few verses which culminate in this verse which you're quoting. Krishna says to Arjuna, of weapons I am the thunderbolt, of men I am the king. I am Yama, lord of death, who judges everything. Of beasts I am the lion, of conquerors I am time, of rivers I am the Ganges, flowing liquid and sublime. Of hymns I am Gatri, of seasons I am spring, of months I am November, the time of peace and harvesting. I am Kandarpa, god of love, like Cupid with his bow, and of cows I am Sarabi, who gives milk in limitless flow. That's our rap of God, derived from Kalakanta's book of poetry. Good morning, Schumann. Nice to have you with us. So the Vedas describe the cow as our mother, Go Mata. And when the cow is happy, satisfied, well taken care of, she produces more milk than her calf is required. Human society is peaceful. There's less divisiveness, less rancor, more harmony. Prabhupada writes, food such as milk, milk products, sugar, rice, wheat, fruits, and vegetables are foods in the mode of goodness, foods that aid health and increase life's duration. He calls milk the most wonderful of all foods. In the 4th verse, 16th chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the purport, Prabhupada says there is a miracle in milk, for it contains all necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievements. Brahminical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the mode of goodness, and for this there is a prime necessity of food prepared with milk. I watched an old video produced by Nrsingananda many, many years ago. It was on YouTube. The resolution is not very good. It's kind of like poor resolution, but it was called The Sacred Cow. I don't know if any of you old timers remember this movie. It's about a half an hour long. It's there on YouTube. You can find it. Be careful you don't click on another movie called Sacred Cow, which is the highest level of profanity. There's a movie most likely supported and paid for and financed by the meat industry, which is called Sacred Cow. And it is encouraging activities which, like Prabhupada says, cannot be mentioned in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So be careful you don't click on that movie, because that is abominable. But there is a movie called Sacred Cow, produced by iskcon Cinema and Nrsingananda, which explains that basically the cow and the bull provide all the foodstuffs we need. The cow produces milk, from which we get butter, cheese, sour cream, cream cheese, ricotta, ice cream, all those things we love to eat. In the Sunday feast last night, our cook Indu created peaches. Peaches is one of my favorites. It's homemade curds spiced with turmeric and just sort of pan fried, crumbled, not not in cubes, but not pressed, just scrambled like scrambled eggs, they actually look like, with turmeric, so they have a yellowish color. And then peas put in, with lightly salted with Himalayan salt. So that's called pea cheese, peas and cheese. And it is not likely to lower your cholesterol, but it is so delicious, so sumptuous. I always go back for seconds whenever there's pea cheese. Now, aside from milk products, the bull provides grains. He puts bread on the table. The ox, with his strength and his stamina, plows the fields, and as a result, we get wheat and grain and soy products by which bread goes on the table. So as the cow is called Gomata, the mother, the bull is called Gopita, the father, because he's the breadwinner. He puts food on the table. Now, in return for all the selfless, generous service that the cow and the bull provide, we should adhere to 3 duties in this connection. 1, we should serve the cow. In human society, we should serve the cow as an expression of our gratitude for all that they do. That's called Goseva. 2, we should worship the cow, not every day, but there are a couple of days a year, most notably Govardhan Puja, when we decorate the cow very nicely, put garlands on the cow, give the cow their favorite edible foodstuffs. This is Go Puja, to go along with Go Seva, worshiping the cow, to go along with serving the cow. And then, as it states in the Bhagavad Gita, the Vaishyas, the commercial section of society, has a sacred duty to protect the cow. And this is called Go Raksha. It is an avenue of charitable donation for well-to-do people in India to donate for a Goshala. Shala means shelter, and Go means cows. So many wealthy people will donate so that some land can be purchased, a simple structure against the rain and the wind and the cold and the heat provided for the cows. And those cows that are old and no longer able to give milk or produce calves can go to the Goshalas, finish out their lifespan, and retire. This is an avenue of charitable contribution for rich people. Rajapati Sutta weighs in here. He said, thanks for sharing a nice example. Krishna takes one from the back to the front. Hope he would bestow more and more mercy on us to take us from darkness to light. He's the Lord of Gokula. Sri Sri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. Thanks for that comment there, Prajasutta. All right. So we should follow in Krishna, the Supreme Personality's Godhead's footsteps, in the example that he sets, what he wants for human society. We should prioritize not technology, not freeways, not motor cars, not tractors, not agro industry, but we should prioritize serving the cow, following the footsteps of Krishna with the same attitude that Krishna has. Now, as it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna, while performing his childhood pastimes, would take the calves out to pasture during the middle of the day with his friends, the Gopas. They would take out to pasture every day, not less, according to what information we have, not less than 100,000 cows. Every morning they would take them out to graze in the pastures of Govardhan Hill. Now, Krishna knew each cow by name. And at the end of the day, when it was time to go back to the village of Vrindavan, Krishna would play his flute. The cows would congregate, being attracted by the sound of Krishna's flute. And Krishna, before leaving the pasturing grounds, in order to make sure that no cows were left behind, he would call each cow by name. Just like you take roll call in class. Helen, here. Mark, here, Geraldo, here. Similarly, Krishna would take roll call, and he knew each and every cow by name. He would call out the name of each and every one of the 100,000 cows. Cow would respond in some affirmative way with a moo. And then only after assuring that all the cows were present and accounted for would Krishna then lead the cavalcade back to the village of Vrindavan, where the calves would joyously reunite with their mothers and have their second drink of milk for the day. Throughout all of the Vedic literatures, we are enjoined as human beings to satisfy the needs of the cows daily, food, shelter, water, before we satisfy our own needs. Before we satisfy our own needs. It's explained after the Kurukshetra war, when he'd lost all his sons, the old blind King Dhritarashtra was being maintained in the palace at Hastinapur by the Pandavas, the victors of the Kurukshetra war. Now, before Yudhisthira did anything else, before he took care of any of his own needs, the first thing he would do, even though Dhritarashtra had been their enemy, had stabbed him in the back, had betrayed them, had loosed his son against the Pandavas for burning them, kidnapping them, poisoning them, killing them in a war. Even though Dhritarashtra was guilty of all this malfeasance, still, because he was like a father, an uncle, a legal guardian to the Pandavas since their infancy, even though he violated that guardianship, still, because that was his official position, before Yudhisthira did anything for his own personal good, he would rise in the morning and he would go right to the chambers of Dhritarashtra and he'd say, "Oh, King, how are you doing? Is there anything you need? Is there anything I can do for you?" Similarly, for our mother the cow, our father the cow, the highest standard of civilized behavior is to take care of their needs before we satisfy even our own needs. And one of the impetus to this is to know that all the demigods are said to reside within the body of a cow. Rather than worshiping separately and fragmental, all the demigods thanking us for wind, thanking us for rain, thanking us for the soil, thanking us for the sun, thanking us for the potency of the seeds, rather than getting splayed out in all those directions, one can satisfy all the demigods simply by worshiping the cows. Krishna manifested this point when it came time in Vrindavan to offer a puja to Indra, the king of heaven, the king of rains. Vrindavan was an agricultural village. They depended on rains for good crop production. So since anyone could remember, they would worship the demigod Indra for rains. It was a tradition in their village which nobody questioned. It was handed down from their fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers. Krishna disingenuously asked his father Nanda Maharaj, "What is the purpose of this sacrifice?" And after Nanda Maharaj explained that it was to satisfy the demigod with whom they, as an agricultural village, had the most intimate connection, Krishna then proceeded to talk him out of it. He then proceeded, as a 7-year-old boy, to talk his father out of the continuation of this traditional sacrifice to worship instead the cows and Govardhan Hill, which provided grass for the cows. That means that Krishna gave more importance to the worship of the cows than to the worship of the king of the demigods, Indra. He set the standard for us that on Govardhan Puja, which occurs in November of every year, we should pull out all the stops in order to worship and show our appreciation to the cows. And I'll just finish with this stunning statement by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to kind of drive the point home. And we'll be back Wednesday with more on this subject, I anticipate. This is what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, echoing Krishna's emphasis on cow protection. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, and I don't know the exact reference for this, Prashant, but this is what he said. Lord Chaitanya said, Lord Chaitanya appeared 500 years ago as a devotional incarnation of Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya, he said, I accumulated unlimited pious credits in my last life by being a cowherd boy. You get it? That was Krishna. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, appearing again as a devotional incarnation. So Lord Chaitanya says, in my last life, because I was a cowherd boy, I accumulated unlimited pious credits. Thus, in this life, I took birth in a family of Brahmanas. Krishna had appeared as a Vaishya. Krishna had appeared as a Kshatriya, as a warrior from Vasudeva and Devaki, but then he was transferred, because of the threat of Kamsa, to the rural village of Vrindavan, where he appeared as the foster father of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, and he consumed his early childhood pastimes in interaction with the gopas, the cowherd boys, the cowherd girls, and the cows. And then Lord Chaitanya said, because of that pious accumulation of living and serving in cowherd village, then he got his next birth one step up on the social ladder as a Brahmin. Now, this is a stunning statement by Lord Chaitanya to reiterate, to accent, to confirm Krishna's prioritizing the care, protection, the worship, and the service of the cows. Go seva, go puja, and go raksha. These are the duties of civilized human society. Something to meditate on throughout the day. Om Tat Sat. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for especially your comments and your input. You'll still have time to make comments, as many as possible. We've got 41 comments already. We've got likes. Thank you. Your likes help to boost us up in the ratings, so to speak. So we've got from Bhaibhavi a like, from Stoka Krishna, Annabelle Abhyangi. I think she's going to arrive here today. I'm not sure. I think she's en route from Reno to spend a few days kicking back here in Spanish Fork, Utah, with the cows and the peacocks and the llamas. Manasaganga, Sundari Priya, a new person, Gultekin Rahimova. Thank you. Can only imagine where you're dialing in from. Anjali Krishna Johri, I haven't seen that name before either. Terry and Taruni, thank you so much for your support and your generosity. You win my heart. I hope you get back when Corona's over. I hope you get back. Terry and Jimmy visited us, stayed for some time. It's been quite a while. You're due for a revisit, guys. Vrajapati Sutta, if I'm not mistaken, he's based in Govardhan Eco Village, I think. I don't know what time it is in India. Jai Ho, that's a great name. Jai Ho Bruho. I just lost the thread here. Okay, let me click on it. See, okay, Jai Ho Bruhal. Thanks very much for joining us. That's a new name. Nandini Mehta, a wonderful Kathak dancer from Bangalore. In the past, she's come to our Festival of India and performed wonderfully with her troupe. Raleigh, thank you so much. Ram Kishore. Chris, whose parents are also joined us from Stockton. Sanjay, Lakshmi Nishringa, Radhesham. Shukshma, thank you very much. Pranab Prapanabrat Gopal, a frequent visitor, Rupa Manjari, and Jean Eskelson. Thank you all. I'm so much regretful that I won't be able to join you tomorrow. We're scheduled to get our shots, our vaccinations at the county building, myself and Bhaibhavi. But we'll be back with you on Wisdom Wednesday to relish, to chew the cud of Go Sheva, Go Raksha, and Go Puja. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.